bear with me 1 second. Awesome. So, yeah, as Terry said, I'm one of your friendly neighbourhood EIRs, and will be knocking around. I'm also the climate activist bit that we alluded to. I've been through the climate reality leadership training by Vice President Al Gore, and I'm one of those 36,000 of his cronies trying to fight the good fight. But my day job, really, if you were to say I had a day job, was through an organisation based out in the States called the Spill Team, which are a global team of human-centred designers. And to add context to what we spoke about with Terry, we're on a mission, really, to see if we can make the world a better place through human-centred design. So I really appreciate you coming today for this topic that is a bit of a passion point, if I'm honest. Like I say, I've been focused for a couple of years on responsible, sustainable climate action type of work within the business arena. And luckily, the leaders and the teams that I've worked with have been coming to us honestly stuck and a little confused about what to do. Bit of information overload there, and it's come about a lot from we've become quite good and quite proactive at measuring the problem, like measuring carbon footprints of supply chains, for example. But measurement is great, but it's just indexing the problem. It's not driving change or behavior. And that's what we really need to do, right? And that's where this talk or this roundtable, this bunch of words that I'm going to do at you, it is coming from, really. But before we get stuck in with that, I think I need to make a little apology for the interesting design choices in this deck. It's gone a bit children's TV presenter collage, but sometimes I get a little bit excited with Canva, and this is one of those examples, so I do apologize. But ignore the garishness of the designs and just focus on the words, and they'll be good, I think. So honestly, this talk, my bit won't be super long, I don't think, but that's okay, because what we'll do is we'll get the opportunity to answer questions and delve deeper and hear a bit from you guys as well at the end. So I'm going to kick off with a bit of a speech, a little bit of a rant, right? So we're living through an interesting time. I mean, how many times have you heard that over the past couple of years? Like, Jesus, I'm sorry to start with that, but I'm not only referring to the big C word, the COVID, but to the whole gamut of humanitarian and societal and ecological challenges that we're facing as a global population of humans. I know that's not a super cheery start to a roundtable, but I know people who attend these things, especially through the lab, are super switched on. So none of us are strangers, I don't think, to the overriding heaviness of current world issues. It hangs around a bit like one of the dark clouds I can see out my window, actually. And sometimes we want to take shelter from it. But other times, right, and where I want you to do, it needs to be met head on, right? We need to pull on our big stompy boots and face this thing together, right? And the topic I'm about to explore with you is one I want to be taken seriously. And I want it to cause you to stop and think, right? I want you to stop scrolling, stop multitasking and listen, because it's very much intertwined with making positive impact on today's challenges. So on the topic of being a responsible business, as the title of this session says, I believe we have now the responsibility to be responsible, just like Terry said at the beginning, right? As well as doing all the other stuff that building a business takes, we need to be responsible. So let's start by defining what that actually is. So there are many different definitions of what responsible business is, right? It's one of the faults of our wonderful English language that things can have multiple meanings. But my favorite is on screen, right? I'll read it out for some of you who may be on phones and stuff and don't have access to look at the slides. But a responsible business is one that has a positive impact on the environment in which it operates. A responsible business is one that has a positive impact on the environment in which it operates. This definition isn't perfect, and definitions rarely fit this beautiful, neat box I have in my mind that has all the right ingredients of meaning inside. But the phrase positive impact is important, and one that I want you to remember and keep in mind. And the environment in which it operates is interesting. So yes, of course, on the macro picture, this means the planet Earth, right? But we're talking about business in context, right? So the environment is the people that we impact, right? So if you think about the people that are impacted by an organization, we have investors, stakeholders, customers, colleagues, employees, all the gamut, even the local community and friends and families and connections and partners and service providers in that environment, in that business ecosystem, right? The environment which we have a positive impact in is not only geographical, but also the human environment, right? It forms a bit of an ecosystem. But the crux of the matter is that to be a responsible business, we have to accept the obligation to do good for people and planet outside of the activity that we call work and outside of the products and services we sell. Maybe not outside, but alongside, as well as, right? And as entrepreneurs and founders and creatives, all you lovely people have a responsibility not to only meet the needs of the people you choose to serve, but also build a brand that does good. So in this short little roundtable session, we'll have a quick exploration of what it means to be responsible from my worldview, from my experience, and how you can use responsibility as a lens to look through to your own business. So sometimes you've got to step back to look forward, right? And that's what we're going to do for a moment. We're going to step back to set the scene of the history, excuse me, while I cough a second, of the responsibility of business. Milton Friedman wrote a groundbreaking essay on corporate purpose, which was published in, I think, September sometime in 1970. So what's that in math? 50 years ago, where he said the social responsibility of a business is to increase its profits. And this was, I think, published in the New York Times, but what it did, it underpinned a lot of thinking in this space for many, many, many years. In fact, it existed till pretty recently in the grand scheme of things. But that was 50 years ago, right? So let's bring it forward a little. Let's make it a little bit more current. So pop back to the pre-pandemic era, which also feels quite a while away, doesn't it? But it's not. So 2019, August, in fact, in 2019, the Business Roundtable published a statement on the purpose of a corporation, like an update on Friedman's original work, right? Again, it says it on the screen, but I'll repeat it for anybody who's on the phone. I'll just have a little drink, bear with me a second. But businesses play a vital role in the economy by creating jobs, fostering innovation, and providing essential goods and services. Businesses make and sell consumer products, manufacture equipment and vehicles, support the national defence, grow and produce food, provide healthcare, generate and deliver energy, and offer financial, communications and other services that underpin economic growth. While each of our individual companies serve its own corporate person, we share a fundamental commitment to all of our stakeholders. Now, I've highlighted that last line. We share a fundamental commitment to all of our stakeholders. So this statement is quite long and not slide worthy, but it goes on to say those stakeholders, from what I refer to, are highlighted to be the usual suspects of customers and community around the organisation. Right, so we're looking at the human-centered issue, not just the stuff that makes us money, right? The things we provide for others in exchange for some money. It's much more about people at this point, and it's been widely endorsed by CEOs across the board. But it also got updated. So as you well know, COVID happened and the pandemic has been around, and that has caused this conversation that we just looked at to evolve a little bit, right? So again, I'll read it on screen. The COVID-19 pandemic has laid bare the profound interconnectedness between businesses and the broader world in which they operate. Employees, customers, and stakeholders expect a CEO to articulate where the company stands on critical issues. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in this slide, right, in that statement to unpack. There's the word interconnectedness, which has been prevalent in a lot of conversations I've had over the last couple of years, over lockdown periods and things, people feeling more connected or being aware of being disconnected from things, right? And understanding their role, and a lot of unlearning, which, you know, borders on spiritualism in business, or at least that way of thinking. So we won't unpack it today, but what I do want you to focus on, and for the context of the rest of this short talk, right, is employees, customers, and stakeholders. So the people connected to a business, to an organization, expect a CEO, right, the leader of the company, the brand voice of this company, to articulate where a company stands on critical issues, right? We know what the critical issues are. But where expectation lies, my friends, this is me calling on the couple of decades working in brand strategy and the meaning built around businesses and offers like that, right? Where expectation lies, there's a responsibility now to meet that expectation, to understand it and to meet it. But this is where we hit a hurdle, right? So again, this is from my personal kind of findings and work in this subject, right? This is where a lot of people are hitting a hurdle. In fact, there was a recent C-suite study. So every year, a company I've had the pleasure to do a bit of consultative work with over the years, called IBM. They do an annual survey every year of their hundreds of thousands of customers, of C-suite customers, right? It's called the C-suite survey. where they surveyed, I think, I can't remember exactly, but it's either 130,000 or 150,000 CXOs, so chief executive officers, insert title as you will, right? Every year to find out the state of play, what keeps them up at night, all this good stuff, right? But there was a couple of important points on the recent one I've had the good fortune to discuss with a friend of mine who works at IBM. And it states that executives have an average of 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% of those are the same as yesterday, and 80% of those thoughts are negative. I'm just going to repeat that. Execs are found to have around 70,000 thoughts a day, right? 90% of those are the same as yesterday, and 80% of those are negative. I repeated that because it surprised me. Honestly, reading it out now and telling you guys has surprised me again. Like, it proves that people are stuck. Like, there's a period of unlearning and relearning happening in the ecosystem of what we mean by business and what work means to us, what work means to others, what business should and shouldn't be. Like, it's confused. But the second point I wanted to highlight is 4 out of 5 C-suite executives, right, feel overwhelmed and underprepared for the people and planet challenges they face. So 4 out of 5 execs feel overwhelmed and underprepared. It's like I said in the beginning, like, people feel stuck. There's loads of good information. Like, we've had the science, we've had the solutions, we've been understood the problem and the data for many years, right? But we've just not taken action. If you look at, there was one, this is a bit of a side tangent, but I am coming back to the presentation. I was speaking to one company just before Christmas. A good company, got about, I think, 70 or so staff, about 20 million turnover, pretty good, doing all right. But they've come up with the idea in the board meeting that they wanted to be have a negative or neutral footprint by 2025, which is brilliant. But the list of options caused them to have kind of decision paralysis at this point. There was things like, should we have hybrid or electric vehicles? Like, how much, all the questions around which ones are those good? Should we have a vegan or vegetarian or plant-rich meal? Should we stop eating meat? Should we just eat more plants? Can we eat fish? Can we not eat fish? There was like recycling issues, single-use pack, like the list went on and on of options they were looking at. Like 20 or 30 different options they could do as an organization to try and reduce carbon footprint. And it got them stuck, right? They were overwhelmed by it and didn't know which is the right way to go. And the answer is we need to do all of them, but this isn't a rant about climate change, so I'll move on. But it's just a personal story that shows that execs are overwhelmed and underprepared. But I'll get back to topic, and you can hear me rant on stuff a bit later on. So being responsibility, with all that in mind, right? With all that in mind, with people being stuck and overwhelmed and underprepared, it's my point for today. It's my raison d'etre. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I'll say it. It's my point that being responsible is a communication challenge, right? We know, as I just said, right, what the answers are. We know what we need to do. We have the science, we understand and have the actions that we need to take to meet the environmental, but also the humanitarian and societal challenges we face. right? We know what the answers are. What really needs to happen is to really drive understanding. Because I can tell you through one of our mantras, a thing that comes up in every bit of client work in this build team is that knowledge and information alone doesn't change anything. Data is wonderful, right? Big fan of data, but on its own, it doesn't change anything. But a deep understanding does. So we've just heard that people are overwhelmed and underprepared in the face of this change. Like the change we're expecting them to do, as it said in the statement earlier. And that's what we need across all these challenges we face. We need change. But brilliant and brave, responsible organizations are brands that are built inside out by people. This isn't a tool or a process challenge. It's a human one. It's driving people's understanding and behavior, right? It's cultural. It's human-centered. This isn't a challenge that will be solved by indexing the problem through measurement. We need positive behavior change, right? That is driven and reinforced by culture, and communication is at the heart of that. The language we use as brands and as businesses and as part of culture work is meaning making. It's the language we use has the ability to make and break worldviews. It's super powerful. But we also have the ability here to create a ripple effect, right? The responsible behavior that we teach and implement within our organizations, within those human-centered ecosystems we call business, is catching. It will ripple out to our friends and family and our closest people that we spend the most time with outside of this thing we call work. That's why I believe it's important for me to kind of focus on organizational change work around shifting the thinking culture around climate and sustainability within organizations, because if you change people's opinion and the way they work inside an organization, it has people append so much of their own identity and behavior around the work they do, right? Well, if you ask people what they do in life or to introduce themselves, they're more or less likely start with a job title, right? It's part of how we claim ourselves of identity, and that's why it's important, right, to add context, add meaning, add depth to that identity and reinforce behavior at work where we spend so much of our time and mental energy doing. So it's a communication challenge, folks, which leads us on to an old favorite topic of mine, right? Storytelling. Oh man, storytelling is the most underrated skill in business. I will tell you that for one thing, right? And with such an important focus of responsibility and sustainability and climate, it's even more true that the stories we tell can change the world. Storytelling has long been the greatest way to get an idea to stick in the mind of another human, right? And when I say long, I don't mean pre-social media, I don't mean pre-COVID, I mean a long time. I mean 330 BC long, right? With a guy called Aristotle. Those of you, as I said, who may have been to a roundtable by me before or seen one recorded or whatever, knows that I've spent a lot of my life preaching, teaching, and designing brand strategies and stories. And I can tell you from my lived experience that the stories we tell adds meaning to the work we do, right? Again, it comes back to that language, right? The stories add meaning to the products and the services and the experiences that we have as business. But not only that, also the ceremonies and symbols that make up our work culture, right? It's the narrative that adds that meaning, right? That meat to the bone. And when people within the organization catch that meaning, right? When they catch that meaning, when it hits them in the face and it sticks, right? A little change is made in their world, and that's what we need. So it's our responsibility to tell the stories of the good work we do, why we do it, how we do it, and what impact it makes in the environment in which we operate. So the stories we tell, just as businesses, just in relation to the work we do, can really change the world. But let's go a little deeper, right? I'll spend one slide unpacking storytelling, because hopefully the story so far, the words I've shared with you, are help you take a step forward to taking some action, right? So let me talk just briefly about how to effectively tell stories so you can go away and do that. So every story that you tell as a business, right? Every opportunity to teach somebody something should have one idea at its center. It's exciting. Like, I am holding myself back, right? I'm full of excitement and energy for this topic, but I know that every effective story, every good story should have one idea at its center, and a story about many things is one that will resonate with very few people who hear it. So choose one thing. It doesn't matter, right? It's a fallacy that it matters how much communication you do as a business, right? The amount of communication is never an issue, but the effectiveness is, right? So pick one thing at the center of it and make it a story about that one thing, because the narrative is about getting that one idea out into the world. It's the amount of stuff in a story that makes it ineffective. So try and be focused. And if you're like me, a creative, slightly ADHD kind of guy, this is super difficult, but it's part of that responsibility that we have. But next up, once you've got the heart of your story, the thing that you want to focus on, they come to these three wonderful words on our screen: trust, think, and feel. This little trinity is everything. I mentioned a chap a second ago called Aristotle. He's the founding father of persuasion and effective communication. And in his works back in 335 BC or something, titled Rhetoric, he shared his ideas on persuasion, which had three core ingredients, and I'm simplifying: ethos, or credibility; pathos, or emotion; and logos, or logic. Or, as I like to use, and to help people understand what I'm trying to teach them, I like to say trust, think, and feel. When you go to tell a story, consider who is the likely audience, or who will hear this story, and what you want them to do as a result, right? What you want them to do as a result of hearing this story. Do you want to build credibility or trust about this thing that you're speaking about? Do you want to challenge someone's assumptions or worldviews? Do you want them to think or choose you? Do you want them to make them feel something? We already know it's emotive stuff that drives action, right? We're all emotive beings, right? There's been lots of scientific analysis that you can look at online, that how the human brain works, and we make decisions with our emotional center of our brain. Every single human on the planet does this, makes decisions with the emotional center of our brain, and then we justify it with logic, right? So do you want people to trust? Do you want people to think about something? Are you wanting to maybe challenge the status quo in your industry? Like, do you want to make a dent or a change in the world? If maybe some of you are purpose or impact driven out there, right? Or do you want people to feel something? What emotion do you want to create in people when they hear a story from your business about the good work you do? Remember, we're talking about responsible business. So when you're telling the stories about the good work you do, right, how it benefits people and planet and the environment in which you exist, right, do you need to build that credibility, that trust, so you're not seen as one of these ridiculous greenwashing campaigns? You're not just saying stuff because it's the right thing to say. It's a true story. It's your subjective truth. It's lived truth from what you're saying. Or is it, I'm a big fan at the moment of being brave enough to challenge, right? And being responsible business and being seen as that, showing up in the marketplace as that is an act of bravery. So when you create something that challenges the way people think about a thing, the narrative, the story around it will make it meaningful and not just shouty. But the feel thing is the real thing that we need to do, right? It's the part of the trinity that drives behavior. And we know from the previous part of this talk that change in behavior is what we need. So if we entrepreneurs and the creatives and the storytellers can make people trust, think and feel something about the good work we do, we will change the world one tiny change at a time and one story at a time. And telling those stories is our kind of responsibility. So we're coming towards the end, and I will recap before we do it, but I want to end with a call to arms, really. You all have this kind of wonderful, as entrepreneurs, right? As entrepreneurial people, we all have creative and entrepreneurial tendencies within us, right? And I believe these behaviors, these natural skills and tendencies and personality traits we have as individuals are our superpower, right? And we know from, if anyone's seen the latest Spider-Man film, with great power comes great responsibility. But I don't want the responsibility to be pressure. Right? I want you to use a human-centered design trick that we use all the time. I want you to look at the flip side of the coin of responsibility and see it as as an impactful opportunity. So just before I recap, let me leave you with this. It might be interesting, actually, because we've probably got some time. I have no idea how long it is, but we've probably got some time to hear your views. But answer, how does your business make the world a better place? Either pop it in the chat or save it for afterwards, and it'll be super interesting to hear what you what your version of that is. But then once you have that down, go out and tell that story. Amplify it to the world, right? It's no good doing good work. It's no good having a beautifully crafted culture and brand and story. Go out and tell other people. like get it out in the world, right? Do press about it, put it on your blog, share it on social media, get speaking opportunities like this. Tell the world about the good work you do, because it's there to elevate others, to lift other people up to your level, to teach other people how you've done it, how you're making an impact in the environment which you exist. It's an opportunity to lead by example and empower others to be responsible too. Right? So responsibility is a competitive advantage. It comes back to where we build brand value and brand strategy and resonance and awareness and all of that good stuff. So I'm just going to skip back to the beginning. I'll do a really quick recap. We started off with listening to a speech by me, a bit of a rant about the situation and how people should be responsible. We looked at defining as best we can what responsible business means, and we know that there's a bunch of definitions and alternative things, because you know, us creative people, consultants like me, we like to own our own definition of a thing. We like to label stuff, but this is the best one that I've found. Then we look back to the 70s of what Milton said a responsibility is, and then we came back to 2019 pre-COVID times, and we understood that businesses, this was widely accepted by CEOs, right? The Business Roundtable is an awesome report that we share now, a fundamental commitment to all of our stakeholders. So it's gone from profit to people, right? We've made that shift, but COVID caused us to think again, right? It became an expectation to be able to articulate as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as brands, where a company stands on critical issues. So climate, Black Lives Matter, equality, diversity, all these stuff, all of the things, right, that we face today, right? We need to know where we stand, especially internally, especially as an employer brand or potential employer brand, but also externally of your organization. We looked at a couple of remarkable stats from the IBM C-suite report that C-suite execs are overthinking. They're having repetitive thoughts, and those thoughts, because they're unable to move forward, are becoming negative. And we've looked at the high percentage of C-suite execs that are overwhelmed and underprepared for the people and the planet challenges they face, the things at the core of being a responsible business. Then we highlighted that it's a communication challenge, because communication, the language we use, the stories we tell, drive behavior and change within any brand, within any organization. So the challenges we face aren't science, aren't process, aren't systems. They're communication challenges. They're people-centered. And we know that the stories we tell can change the world. The stories we tell can change the world. I've seen it happen in organizations. The way you tell an effective story is by casting your mind back and bringing to life the dude, Aristotle, and trust, think, and feel, the ingredients of effective communication. Right? Pick a story about a thing and decide whether this story is there to build trust, to make people think, or to make people feel something. Which is the most important thing for you to do with that opportunity, that chance to tell a story to somebody? And then, last but not least, tell the story, because it elevates other people. Right? We are at our best all teachers, and we are at our best all storytellers. But that, folks, is that. And if I've done it right, there should be time for questions. I'm going to stop sharing because I have no idea how long that was. He says, I think. Let me come back to Teams. How do I stop sharing? Anybody? Oh, here we go. Beautiful. I'm back, I think. Is anyone there? Hey, there we go.
Oh, thanks so much, Tim.
It's all right.
As ever, inspiring. Yeah, we've got probably about 15 minutes for some Q&A, and I know last time Tim was here that people had a lot of questions for him. So what was the question that you wanted to ask the businesses, Tim? Will you just say that again?
Yeah, so it was, how does your business make the world a better place?
Anybody?
Can be homework, or if you've got an answer, please shout out.
Is anybody?
I can do a quick overview if you want.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Tim.
So at the moment, my business doesn't have anyone because I'm not yet trading, but I'm designing a range of products to make the world safer. So personal security, home safety, and theft recovery. And this last year that I've been starting to set the business up and look at reducing my unknown unknowns in terms of getting a scalable business model together, getting a value-driven, enterprise set up, and all the stuff with the pandemic and the climate crisis and these sorts of things have really helped to shape my view on where I want to be heading. And so my focus is obviously going to be on employees to help attract and retain key talent. They're going to be giving back to society, certainly in the form of subsidised product offerings for people on lower incomes, and also looking at the sustainability element and the kind of circular economy, especially in a manufacturing business, offsetting greenhouse gas emissions and things. The manufacturing sector is often quite slow to sort of pick up on that, and a lot of the stuff they do is just, we'll plant a sapling and in 80 years time that it'll suck back up the carbon. But yeah, that's me. So grand plans, early days.
Yeah, interesting, Tim. Good name, thanks for coming. I went through all of my school years till I was about 16 not knowing any other Tim. Now I know loads. I thought I was the only one, but anyway, really interesting opportunity you've got, right? So I twigged onto the world safer, right? So there's a really old model, right, called Maslow's hierarchy of needs that you may or may not have heard of, but it's super Googleable, right? But there's a very useful updated version called the Bain value pyramid, and that's BAIN value pyramid, and it's kind of a brand strategy tool, but it converts Maslow's into business stuff, right? And you would take a look at it. There's a beautiful, in fact, I've got a link, I'll pop a link in the chat, but there's a beautiful kind of animation and tool that goes with that will help you develop all the things that you've got in front of you using that tool. Let me come back to Teams. I'll just pop it in the chat. Oh, I haven't got the chat. I'll send it. It's Bain value pyramid. It's super famous. Just Google it. It'll be fine. And I'll send it Rachel, and she might do a follow-up email maybe. But also look at that and look at tools. I would say like regeneration.org. It's Paul Hawker's website. I don't know if anybody knows who Paul Hawker is, but he's incredible. There's some great Rich Roll podcast episodes with him on about how we can solve a climate change in a generation. But his organization is regeneration.org, and it's got so many good tools and links to resources to help make that journey easier. And if you're looking at planting trees, please put that money and energy into stopping the chopping down trees, not planting them. We need to plant new ones, but it's more effective if you stop them chopping down trees. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tim. That was great. Any more comments about what you're doing with your own business that you want to shout about, or that you'd like to sort of ask how you can improve your business? Oh, we've got a hand. We've got Peter. Oh, we've got a few hands. I'll start with Chris Carter, and then I'll go on to Peter. So Chris.
That handsome man on the screen.
Right back at you, Tim. Right back at you, Tim. It's actually not. Sorry, I don't want to disrupt, but it's not a business focused question, but actually more, I guess, of an academic question, because as I was listening to your talk, Tim, and thank you, it was really interesting. I noticed something pop up in my Twitter feed about a Financial Times article that had come out today, asking about MBAs and their perceptions of various different subjects. There's quite a worrying statistic nestled in amongst the many sort of slightly confusing graphs in the article, and I've actually tagged you into it on Twitter, Tim, if you want to share it. But the figure I've seen is that in canvassing MBA alumni, only 3% feel that ethics and environmental issues are an important subject to topic in this particular sample. So my question, which is a bit of a cruel question to put you on the spot, but given that you were talking about this kind of area, how do you think we might, as people who are teaching on the MBA program and trying to work with and develop the future business leaders, kind of engage them and enthuse them and perhaps even educate them in the topics you've been talking about?
It's a good question, and it's I'm going to say the answer that comes straight to mind is it's about the perspective that those topics take within the subjects, right? So rather than being, and I know Nottingham are particularly good at this, right? So this isn't a Nottingham thing, but having them as an underlying theme or moral of the story in relation to every say module or topic within an executive education program, right? Rather than having a moral, like the underlying, oh yeah, and it's good for employee experience, and it's good for operations, and it's good for brand strategy, and that like if you do this thing, the perspective is often to flip that round and start with the intangible, less academic framework modelable versions like ethics, right, which is a large topic, and environment and climate is a large topic with lots of information about. But I found in the private client work, and I'm not an academic guy, but teaching the intangible first makes it easy for the models and the frameworks to be accepted, because it's the intangible, human-centered, creative people stuff that adds depth to the model. And I know sometimes I'm a human-centered designer. Like, I love a framework and a system. I love them. I use them all the time, right? And it's not that, but the teaching of the tool is the easy bit. Why they should use it and getting them to use it and understand it internally, so they go off and they can teach other people in their organization to use it, is the human bit, right? The messy stuff around it. So mine would to be change the perspective slightly, because getting smart people to understand tools and systems isn't tricky. It's the other stuff. Don't know if that helps.
No, it does. Thanks, Tim. And actually, that does resonate, I think, a lot with what we're trying to achieve. At least, we can say how well we're doing it, but we use SDG based goals to try and interestingly, going from what you're saying, 3 years ago, I think the students were slightly scratching their heads as to why we were doing food waste as an entrepreneurial challenge, whereas now, it's not even questioned. I think they get it a lot more. It's a lot more obvious, which is promising, which, as opposed to the figures. So
I mean, the simplest perspective, and this isn't a massive point, the simplest perspective that I've seen change in people's minds, in leaders' minds who I've worked with, is that a lot more businesses are starting to see money as a result, not as a focal point, right? So money is a result of doing some other. So if you do good work, people will pay for it. Right? It's not simplifying it. It's not super complicated. Obviously, there's ingredients in there, but like, people are beginning to see that money is a result of doing some good stuff. It's what the good stuff is, right? We know what we know, and you guys, especially you like smart folks, will know what I'm echoing a bit. All right. But what you guys will know what effectiveness is. We know, right, we've got research what doing effective work is in many fields, from marketing to operations to finance, right? It's that other 20%, that magic of personalization for the organization that will make that impact. We'll switch that thing.
Cheers, Tim.
Thanks so much, Chris and Tim. Peter, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Chris. Great to see you. And hi, Tim. Thank you very much for the presentation. So I have a contribution and a question. So with regards to my business, I run a business called Kente Master. It's based in Ghana, and it's a fashion social enterprise. And we are helping to economically empower local Kente weavers. They weave this fabric called Kente, which is their main source of livelihood, but they find it difficult to get access to markets. And we have a website and social media, and we make innovative products from this fabric and help to, create markets for them by exporting these products. And also currently working on using some plastics to make some recycled fashionable products also for sale.
Yeah.
Contribution to the environment. And my question is, so you talked about how the definition of responsibility has changed over time. Okay, and I know mostly now people use the triple bottom line when they are trying to be responsible.
Yeah.
But how should organizations approach it, especially when they are starting out? Should they actually pick a particular focus, maybe just look at the environment and the people, what they are going to do, or try to be open? Maybe every year they evaluate and see what are the changing trends, what is currently the definition of responsibility at that time. Because now you talked about COVID-19 and how that has also changed things a bit. Should organizations be more flexible with regards to responsibility and probably evaluating maybe on a yearly basis, or maybe not, if not every year, but every 2 years or something, and try to work alongside that? Thank you.
Okay, so there's a few things there, right? So in terms of choosing the area you're going to make impact in, right? Do one thing well, right? All of the things are good things, right? But one of the skills that entrepreneurs need is the ability to choose, right? And choice is a super interesting topic that I won't open that rabbit hole this late in the day. But we have to make decisions or choices based on intelligent assumptions and knowledge and information and that sort of thing. But that's one of the entrepreneurial tendencies, right? But we need to choose which one comes first. You might end up doing a bunch of stuff like plastic and environment and local economy and poverty and loads of stuff, right? But which one are you leading with is the choice. And it is a choice, but it's a difficult one, right? But which one, when you walk into a room to pitch one, like which one comes first, doesn't mean that you can't do any of the others, but you do have to choose which one comes first. So do one thing well. And the triple bottom line, the 3 Ps, whatever you want to call it, is a great model to do that. I would swap profit for prosperity, and look at the definition of prosperity, because it's an easier model to internalize when looking at building a responsible business. I forgot the second half of the question. What was the second half of the question? I've answered it.
Yeah, so I was just asking if, companies should choose one thing and stick to it, or try to evaluate from time to time and see what could be the definition of responsibility at that time. So
choosing one thing first, right? It was the same point. I just got scatty in my mind. But like choosing one thing first doesn't mean that you don't do the rest. But your job is to do one thing well first. And there may be measurements, there may be official metrics, there may be things like B Corp certification, or as Chris said, the SDGs that you're working towards may have OKRs or KPIs attached to them that you can use to measure. But I would use specificity, like Be brave enough to be focused on doing one thing well until you're satisfied that that is a scalable, repeatable session. And without your time, energy, and money, that's still going to be an impact you're going to make before you move on to making another impact. Just because doing loads of stuff at the same time, not particularly well, is not useful to anybody. Do one thing well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. We've probably got time for one quick question if anyone's got one, or if people are being shy, then that you can always email me and I can pass it on to Tim.
Yeah.
But is there any just final questions before we go?
Good. Awesome.
Don't think so. Okay.
Well, Tim, that's been impactful for me. I know it, and everybody, I'm sure. Thank you so much just for reminding us as well that this is something that needs to be at the forefront of our businesses every day, just as responsible humans, right? So thank you, Tim, and we're looking forward to your next roundtable already. All right, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you all soon. See you at the next roundtable. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.